Cowboys Nation, the temperature around this team is starting to rise, and it is not because of a regular season game or a playoff push. It is because the tone has shifted. For the first time in a while, there is real chatter that the Dallas Cowboys might actually come out swinging when free agency opens. And when that kind of message starts circulating around the league, especially after conversations that took place during the NFL Combine, you better believe people are paying attention. Jerry Jones made it clear in his own way that the organization sees a need to be more aggressive. The message coming out of Indianapolis was simple. Dallas understands that standing still is not an option. The bar from last offseason was low, and everyone knows it. So when there's talk about spending more, about pushing the ceiling higher, it immediately grabs the attention of a fan base that has been waiting to see bold action instead of cautious maneuvering. What stood out this time is that the buzz did not feel forced. It did not feel like typical offseason optimism. There was a consistent drumbeat suggesting that the Cowboys are prepared to invest, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. And let's be honest, they have to. The defense showed flashes, but it also exposed clear weaknesses, especially at linebacker and safety. If this team wants to take a real step forward, patchwork solutions will not be enough. One of the names generating serious conversation is Dean. The linebacker from the Philadelphia Eagles has become one of the most talked about potential fits for Dallas. When you look at his style of play, it makes sense. He is instinctive, he flies to the football, and he brings a level of intensity that this defense could absolutely use. The idea of plucking a key defender from a division rival adds even more intrigue. It is not just about filling a need. It is about making a statement. Of course, free agency and the Cowboys have not always been synonymous with big splashes. That is why many fans are cautiously optimistic rather than fully convinced. We have heard strong words before. We have heard about being aggressive before. But this time feels a little different because the needs are so obvious and the internal pressure is real. The expectation is not simply to compete. It is to contend. Another intriguing possibility is Quay Walker from the Green Bay Packers. There are coaching connections here that cannot be ignored. Familiarity matters in this league, especially when a staff is trying to reshape the identity of a unit. Walker has the athletic profile that jumps off the screen. He can run, he can hit, and when he is locked in, he looks like a cornerstone defender. The question becomes financial. What will his market look like, and how far are the Cowboys willing to go? Then you have a name like E.J. Speed, who represents a more traditional Dallas approach in free agency. He has produced in stretches, he brings size and range, but he might not be the type of signing that stops you from drafting a linebacker early. That is the difference between adding depth and securing a foundational piece. If Dallas signs someone like Speed, it likely means the front office still views linebacker as a premium draft priority. But if they land a player like Dean, suddenly the draft board opens up in a very different way. Alex Singleton is another linebacker whose name has been circulating. He may not be flashy, and he might not dominate highlight reels, but he is steady and productive. There is value in reliability, especially on a defense that needs consistency snap after snap. However, competition for his services could be real, and that is where Dallas will have to decide how aggressive this new mindset truly is. Safety is another area that cannot be ignored. Reed Blankenship has emerged as a logical target in many conversations. He understands defensive structure, he processes the game quickly, and he can step into a starting role without a long adjustment period. He might not be a superstar, but sometimes what you need is a dependable presence who can stabilize the back end. Jalen Thompson is a fascinating option as well. His versatility could be extremely valuable in a modern defense that demands flexibility. He has experience playing in space, dropping into coverage, and even handling hybrid responsibilities. That kind of chess piece gives defensive coordinators options. It allows disguises, creative alignments, and adjustments that can throw off opposing quarterbacks. And then there is the edge rusher conversation, which brings up Trey Hendrickson of the Cincinnati Bengals. If Dallas truly wants to send shockwaves through free agency, this is the type of move that would do it. Hendrickson is relentless. He produces. He affects games. But he would not come cheap. Investing heavily at edge while also addressing linebacker and safety would require serious financial commitment. It would signal that the Cowboys are done tiptoeing and ready to chase elite defensive production at every level. Another under-the-radar name is Draymond Jones. His ability to move along the defensive front adds intrigue. Early in his career, he thrived inside, creating disruption as a three technique. Over time, he has shown he can line up outside and bring pressure from multiple spots. That kind of versatility is attractive for a defense looking to create mismatches and confusion up front. All of these potential moves circle back to one core question. How many new defensive starters will Dallas bring in? It is not just about signing bodies to fill out the roster. It is about reshaping the spine of the defense. Linebacker, safety, edge. These are not luxury upgrades. They are necessities if the Cowboys want to match up with the elite offenses across the league. The early tampering period is approaching fast, and that is when we will truly find out if the talk translates into action. This front office understands the pressure. The fan base understands the urgency. The locker room knows that small tweaks will not be enough. If the Cowboys follow through on even a portion of this aggressive mindset, the complexion of the defense could look dramatically different heading into the new season. As the countdown to free agency continues, the spotlight on the Dallas Cowboys only gets brighter because this is not just about adding talent. It is about redefining the identity of the defense. For the past few seasons, there have been stretches where this unit looked dominant, flying around, forcing turnovers, dictating the tempo. But when the competition stiffened, the cracks showed. Missed tackles at linebacker, blown coverages on the back end, and not enough consistent pressure when it mattered most. That is why this offseason feels different. It feels like a crossroads moment. The front office understands that depth signings alone will not satisfy a locker room that believes it is close to something bigger. Yes, every roster needs those mid-level additions, the players who come in on reasonable deals and compete for rotational snaps. But Dallas also needs impact. They need difference makers. They need at least one or two players who walk into the building and immediately change the conversation. When you look at the list of rumored targets, you can see the blueprint forming. If they were to land someone like Nakobe Dean, that would not just be a roster move, it would be a tone setter. He brings speed, instincts, and an edge that fits the culture this defense is trying to build. Pairing him with an established presence would give Dallas flexibility in the draft, allowing them to avoid reaching for need and instead focus on value. That is how smart teams operate. They attack weaknesses in free agency, so they can let the board fall to them in April. But what if the Cowboys decide to spread their resources instead of making one splash? That is where names like E.J. Speed and P.J. Locke come into play. These are players who can contribute, who can handle snaps if called upon, but who do not necessarily eliminate the need for premium draft investment. Signing a safety like Locke, for example, might solidify depth and provide familiarity within the scheme, yet still leave the door open for a first-round addition at the position. That layered approach can work, but only if the top-end talent is addressed somewhere else. Reed Blankenship remains one of the most logical fits when discussing a plug-and-play safety. He understands the responsibilities of the position and has shown he can hold up in meaningful moments. For a secondary that needs communication and stability, that type of presence carries weight. He might not headline national shows, but inside a defensive meeting room, reliability is gold. Dallas has been burned before by banking on upside without enough proven consistency. This time, they may prioritize players who have already shown they can execute within complex schemes. Then there is Jalen Thompson, whose versatility adds an entirely different dimension. Modern defenses thrive on disguise. They rotate safeties late, drop defenders into unexpected zones, and blur the lines between linebacker and defensive back. Thompson has experience handling those hybrid responsibilities. Bringing in someone like him could unlock more creative looks, especially against the high-powered offenses that dominate the conference. When you're facing elite quarterbacks, unpredictability becomes a weapon. The edge rusher conversation might ultimately define how aggressive this offseason truly is. Trey Hendrickson represents a statement move. He is not a developmental project. He is a proven pass rusher who consistently disrupts quarterbacks. Imagine adding that kind of production opposite an already talented front. Suddenly, offensive coordinators have to rethink protection schemes. Suddenly, third down becomes a nightmare for opposing offenses. But again, the cost would be significant, and that is where Dallas must balance ambition with cap reality. Draymond Jones offers a different type of intrigue because of his positional flexibility. Being able to reduce inside on passing downs or kick out wide creates matchup problems. Over the course of a long season, that versatility keeps offenses guessing and allows defensive coordinators to adapt week to week. The Cowboys have valued that kind of multiplicity before, and if they are serious about evolving schematically, players who can wear multiple hats become even more valuable. All of these potential additions raise another important question. How many new starters are we realistically talking about? 1, 2, 3? If Dallas signs a linebacker, a safety, and adds a rotational edge who earns more snaps, that could fundamentally reshape the defensive core. And sometimes a fresh core brings renewed energy. Competition intensifies. Standards rise. Veterans feel pushed. Younger players see opportunity. There is also the psychological factor. When a front office spins with purpose, it sends a message to the locker room that management believes in the window. That belief can be contagious. Players notice when ownership invests. They notice when the organization refuses to settle for incremental upgrades. That mindset can carry into training camp, into preseason battles, into those critical early season matchups that set the tone for everything that follows. The early tampering period will reveal a lot. That is when conversations turn into agreements and rumors turn into headlines. Cowboys Nation will be watching every move, every reported visit, every contract figure. The reaction will be immediate and loud because expectations are high. This fan base is not asking for reckless spending. They are asking for intentional aggression. They are asking for moves that align with the clear weaknesses we all saw on the field. If Dallas manages to secure a true starter at linebacker and solidify safety with someone who can command the back end, the draft suddenly becomes a luxury rather than a lifeline. That is when teams can take the best player available and build sustainably instead of scrambling to plug holes. It is a delicate balance, but it is also an opportunity to shift perception, an opportunity to prove that the lessons of past off-seasons have been learned. And as we sit here on the brink of one of the most pivotal free agency periods in recent Cowboys memory, the only thing left to see is whether the promises translate into pen on paper and whether this defense finally gets the reinforcements it needs to transform potential into dominance. What makes this moment compelling is the sense that the organization recognizes the crossroads. The offensive core remains potent, capable of putting points on the board against any opponent. But championships are often decided by defensive resilience in critical moments. Third down stops, red zone stands, forced turnovers late in tight games. Those are the details that elevate a talented roster into a title contender. The coming days will clarify whether this offseason becomes a turning point or another chapter of cautious optimism. Contracts will be signed, depth charts will shift, and expectations will rise. Each decision will echo into training camp and beyond, shaping how analysts and fans evaluate the trajectory of the franchise. And as the free agency period unfolds, the belief that Dallas might finally embrace calculated aggression continues to build, fueling anticipation for what could be one of the most defining stretches in recent Cowboys history. But before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Dallas Cowboys. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. Whispers around the league suggest that linebacker Devin Bush could be edging toward a deal with the Dallas Cowboys, a move being framed in league circles as equal parts calculated and quietly ambitious. Nothing has been announced, contracts are said to be fluid, and front offices remain guarded, but the chatter paints a picture of a franchise looking to reinforce its spine without disrupting the broader architecture of the roster. Bush's name carries weight. Once viewed as a cornerstone defender with rare burst and range, his career arc has been shaped by flashes of high-end play mixed with stretches of uncertainty. That profile, however, may be precisely what intrigues decision-makers in Dallas. The Cowboys have long prioritized speed at the second level, valuing linebackers who can close space, mirror backs and tight ends, and still hold up when the game tilts physical. In that sense, Bush represents a low-risk, potentially high-reward addition who could thrive if placed in a defined role. From a strategic standpoint, the rumor reads as a depth move with upside rather than a headline grab. Dallas has learned, sometimes the hard way, that seasons are marathons, not sprints. Attrition at linebacker is almost inevitable, and teams that survive deep into the calendar often do so with waves of competent contributors rather than a thin reliance on stars. Bush's experience in pressure situations and familiarity with complex defensive calls could allow him to step in seamlessly, whether as a rotational piece or an injury contingency. There is also the motivational angle. Players on short-term prove-it paths often find renewed focus in structured environments with clear expectations. If the Cowboys staff believes it can harness Bush's athletic traits while insulating him from overexposure, the fit becomes more compelling. For now, it remains speculation whispered in hallways and on talk shows. But if the dots connect, this will be the kind of under-the-radar maneuver that looks ordinary in March and inspired by winter. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Dallas Cowboys, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. We always look forward to your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.